the organizer of It Takes a Village, Foster and Adoption Services, Kim Rowan, and from Adoption Option of Midland, Mary Tewksbury. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Kim. Welcome, thank you.
Hi, Mary. And they came all the way down from Midland to be with us today. Thank you. But your passion for the cause is what caused you to reach out to us to talk to our viewers about the need for foster families. Now you are a foster mom.
Well, not right now, but I was.
And how many kids did you foster?
Well, I fostered for 5 years, and I had 45 kids come through my home.
45 kids?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, in 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So how many at any one time?
Well, as a lot of foster parents will relate, you sometimes start license your home for 1, then you go to 2, and then you go to 3, and then your other children living at home move out. Then you move out to 5, and then I ended up being a group home when I ended. So yeah, so sometimes we had 8, sometimes we had 1, but yeah, we had 45 in the whole 5 years.
And now this is something that you do with It Takes a Village. You offer foster and adoption services.
Well, this was an idea that I had this year because the holiday season was coming, and I thought, how could we help foster children? How could we help foster parents during a season that's hard for them too? Because foster kids come into care at all times of the year and every day. So sometimes they qualify for different programs, but when they come in late in the year, sometimes they don't. So the idea was to gain some Christmas gifts, but the other idea was, what do foster parents need when a child shows up on their doorstep? And sometimes they only have an hour and the child is there. So we wanted to collect diapers, we wanted to collect blankets, gift cards for teens, hygiene products, and those type of things. And I worked with Adoption Option and Ennis Center, which is also in Saginaw, Detroit, and Flint. And we teamed up together to put on 6 fundraisers, which I'm very proud of.
Yeah, and here's some photos of some of the donations. Now, the organization Adoption Option of Midland, Mary, that's a nonprofit. And what do you guys do?
Well, we are a nonprofit child welfare agency, and although the name says adoption, we have way more services than just adoption. Mm-hmm. So we have licensing workers, so if someone's interested in becoming a foster parent, we have a team of people who can help them through that. We have foster care workers who have state foster care children from the state that they care for and try to help the parents and the child reunify. If that doesn't happen, we have adoption workers who come in and try to find that child a forever home. Reunification is always the ideal goal. So we also have some family preservation programs that we can offer to clients to help keep that reunification goal in place.
There's not enough foster parents in the state of Michigan right now, right?
Yeah, mm-hmm. COVID kind of put a kibosh on a lot of things. And during COVID, we couldn't go out and recruit foster parents. So every year, foster parents give up their license. They're done with it. They have enough children. They want to be done with fostering children. So then we can always recruit. So there's always that. Some are giving up their license, some are renewing, or some are becoming new foster parents. During COVID, we couldn't do that. Mm. So here we are, 2.5-ish, almost 3 years later, we're now getting back into that ability to go out and recruit families to become licensed foster care workers, foster parents.
And the state and organizations really want to keep the kids in the county where they're familiar. They've got relatives or friends or whatever, and unfortunately that's not been able to happen. You've had to place kids have across the state.
Children, say we have a child removed in Midland County. So that child might be placed 2-3 counties away, north, south, east, or west. Foster care workers usually go with family first if they're appropriate, but if not, then they gotta go, where can we find the next foster family? Mm-hmm. and that could be 3 counties away in either direction. So we also, when those children are removed, the court might order supervised parenting time. So those parents and their children get time together. The court might say you get 2 2-hour visits a week. So those children, wherever they are, have to be either driven to a location, maybe it's midway, maybe it's where the county where the child came from or where the parent lives, to do visits. Or the parents have to be, driven however many hours away necessary to go where the child is.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of creates a burden when, a child has to spend 2 hours to go to a 2-hour visit and then 2 hours back. Or a parent has to spend 4 hours a day, twice a week, to get a visit with their child because they also have other services they have to do. So that's why Kim and I really want to get the conversation going about we need more foster parents.
Yeah, and sometimes those visits, they're in the parking lot at the mall or the police station.
The mall,
Yeah.
we try not to do parking lots, but yes, we try to make it a quality parenting time, but there's still a lot of travel time involved sometimes.
So how does somebody end up in foster care? How does a child end up in foster care? Are there a lot of reasons?
Yeah, well, from my experience with the kids that I've had, my 3 adoptive children were all drug-exposed children. So substance abuse is a factor sometimes that brings them in. Neglect. Sometimes I would have premature babies that weren't getting all of the things that they needed, so that was a issue. Sometimes parents just aren't in a mentally able to care for their children, so they need services. So it's a pretty serious thing to remove a child from their home. And all of those workers, and that's one of the misconceptions that I hear a lot, that CPS could just go in and just take kids because they feel like taking them. That is not true.
No.
Everything has to held up in the court. So if there's a reason to take them, then they will. But the idea is always to reunify the family, work on those issues, and get the child back home. Sometimes that can't happen, so then we need adoptive parents as well. And sometimes our foster parents become those adoptive parents.
So you've had 45 foster children over the 5 years, and 3 you adopted. Was that your plan, or
No, it wasn't, because I had 4 children going in. It was not the plan. And but sometimes you feel like a child just belongs with you, and it ended up that these 3 did. So yeah, that wasn't the plan going in. The plan was just to be a foster parent.
Well, I think it takes special people to be a foster parent or an adoptive parent, and there's probably some more misconceptions about it. One is that there's money to be made,
Oh yes.
right?
Yes, that's a misconception. You do get some money from the state, obviously, for each child to help, balance off some of the things. But when I took medically fragile children, I went to the U of M, I went to Detroit, I went to Ann Arbor to the hospitals because that's what I specialized in. But you're not gonna, if you think you're gonna get into it for money, then please don't get into it. You have to get into it because you want to make a difference in the life of a child.
And there's a day, a week, months. You don't know how long you might have a foster child with you.
That's true. Sometimes you can have them for a week, and then a family will step forward and be appropriate. And then sometimes I had a child for 3 years.
And they show up with sometimes just the clothes on their back or a brown paper bag
Yes.
with a toothbrush.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yes. Yes. And then we have an issue in, I think, Michigan with our teens. And Mary could speak on that too, but our teens, we have trouble placing teens. So if there's people out there that really have a heart for teens, we need our teens in homes so that when they age out, they know what to do as an adult. We can't expect them to be an adult if they've moved around for years in the foster care system and just kept moving and moving and moving because there wasn't, their behavior, maybe their trauma turns into behavior, and then they have to move. So all they know is they just keep moving, like a trash bag that keeps moving from one place to another.
Yeah, it's so sad. What is it about teens, Mary, that makes them harder to place?
It's basically what Kim said. They are at, teenagers and they're even preteens are at an age where they kind of know what's going on in the home. Whereas when they're littler, they may not quite understand. So they have a lot more trauma, and that trauma does, manifest itself in behaviors. And even when you place a troubled child in a good home, they may not understand that they are in a good home. All they know is what they came from. So even though they're placed in a good home, they may not feel safe. They may not know how to play what the rules are, how to play the game, how do you get along. They will act out in ways, and if you've ever had teenagers, and I've had 4, it can be a challenging time, whether they are adopted, whether they're foster care, or whether they're your own. So it does take people who are willing to really devote their time and figuring out what is the problem. What it isn't necessarily what's wrong with them, but what happened to them that made them this way. So dealing with the trauma as a teenager helps them to be better prepared as an adult.
One of the things I could see someone being hesitant about becoming a foster parent is getting too involved. They fall in love with a kid, and then they have to send them back to where they came from.
Yeah, that's true. But it shouldn't be the reason not to become a foster parent. Because if you're going into it, and I've talked to a lot of people going into being foster parent, go into it because you want to be a part of the life of a child, and do whatever you need to do while you have that child. And then just when that child is ready to leave, then you have to, that you've done the best while you had that child, and whatever that needed to be done, whether, go to the doctor's, mental health, just do what you need to do and you will make a difference.
Is there a lot of investigation and background checks and all that? Does that dissuade people from?
I think people, and Mary can talk about this too, but I think people are not sure what all the things they need to do to become a foster parent. Obviously, you have to have a license by the state of Michigan, and that means you have to be looked into. We want to make sure that our foster parents, are people that don't have huge backgrounds. We don't want to put a child in a setting where there's already issues going on, and because we're not doing better by the child. So yeah, you do have to go through training. You do have to go through a lot of background checks and all that stuff. And it is extensive, but it should be.
Yeah, I mean, if the state's going to place a child in a home, they got to make sure that home is going to be appropriate and safe. So it can be viewed as intrusive. I mean, they want to know lots of things, but they only do that so that that child is placed in a safe place.
So kids are placed in the system, foster parents then matched. At what point does the foster parent to be, do they get involved? Are they able to say, I think our home would be good for elementary school kids, and
they can pick and choose what kind of age range they want. Some maybe only want the babies. Some maybe want the teenagers or the preteens. Some foster parents that I've worked with, age is not an issue, race is not an issue, gender is not an issue. They'll just take whoever they're offered. If a foster care worker says, hey, can you take this child? They're like, yes.
Who's the ideal? Is it like a mom, 2-parent home? No?
No. And that's another thing that people think, well, I can't do this because I don't live in a mansion. I can't do this because I'm a single parent, or maybe I don't make, this amount of money. When I was a foster parent and I was a group home, I lived in a modular home in a mobile home park. And there are rules. You have to have a certain amount of space, but I was able to do that. So before you're saying to yourself, I can't do it, get a hold of your state foster care department, or like Adoption Option or Ennis Center, and they will tell you exactly what you need to become a foster parent, because a lot of times you've already decided, well, I can't do that because I'm not married. There's many foster parents who are single parents.
So we've got MDHHS, and
there's Adoption Option, there's Ennis Center. If you Google even like adoption agencies or child welfare agencies in your area, it'll come up, and then you just call them. And my thinking is always, if you have a question, if you have a thought, maybe I want to do this, get informed, ask, check it out. Maybe it's not what you want to do because it is a pretty serious decision. But I'm all about make an informed decision, whether that decision is yes, I want to, or no, I don't.
Yeah, and here in Jackson, we have Family Service and Children's Aid. We've got a number of other organizations that all in some form deal with adoption or fostering. And then for someone, is it to be an adoptive parent versus a foster parent, is that like the next level? Like for you, was it?
Well, I'm an adoptive parent of children I already had in my home.
Oh, okay.
So,
that came first.
right, they were already my foster children, and then it ended up that they were with me so long that I was looked at as an adopted parent. So, but you can become a pre-approved home for adoption as well, and not necessarily do the fostering. But yeah, I mean, when you have a child for a long time and you just feel like that, you can be looked at as an adopted parent, which I was 3 times. So, yeah, so and you can be supportive of the foster care system without being a foster parent. There's foster children at your neighborhood school. They go to your church. Be very welcoming when you see them. Try to support a foster home that you know in your community, and get involved in that way, even if you choose not to be a foster parent. Support the foster care system.
And people get, I think, the best reference about whether to explore this from other foster parents. And I know those like you are often very willing and vocal about your experience.
Right, because I'm not going to stop talking. I'm going to continue to advocate. We did things last year. We're going to do them again in our area this year. But now I'm advocating. My first sentence when I reach out to somebody is, let's talk about foster kids, because we want to continue to talk about them. They're children who did not put themselves in the system. So we want to make sure that our state elected officials are doing whatever they can to make the system the best that we can give these kids and these families. So we want to, this isn't like a silent thing that we shouldn't talk about. We need to keep talking about our foster children, and we need to make sure we see to their needs.
Yeah, I'm sure you've, well, I know you've changed lives, but I'm sure you've saved lives as well.
Yes, because the news tends to, sometimes we focus on, a foster child was in this house and this happened, and then it just gets on the news. But what about all of the foster parents who are really heroes, that are doing this job every single day, and they're doing it well? When are we going to start talking about them? That's what I'm going to talk about.
Well, we appreciate you sharing your experiences with us today, and thanks for coming down.
Well, thanks
being
for
with us.
having us.
Yeah. You can contact Adoption Option of Midland or Mary or Kim, and there will be links on our website later today. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Organizer of It Takes a Village, Foster and Adoption Services, Kim Rowan, and from Adoption Option of Midland, Mary Tewksbury. Stay with us. We've got some birthdays and anniversaries to celebrate